My name is Pat Ranella. I'm the District Director of Student Support Services here in Middletown. And I want to take a moment and thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a great turnout. I think the show shows how important this vaping epidemic is that's going through our nation. And this evening, we have a number of experts in their fields that are going to share a little bit on the side of law enforcement, what our high school and middle school and elementary SACs are doing as far as the vaping epidemic is concerned. And then we also have a speaker from Well Springs who's also going to speak with you this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to first turn it over to our Community Relations Officer, Cruz from Middletown Township Police Department.
Good evening. I'm Officer Cruz from Middletown Township Police Department. I've been with the department for about 7 years now. Chief Weber started a Community Relations Division last summer, which I gladly accepted. Obviously, the vaping situation is pretty real to everybody right now. It's becoming a huge problem, mostly for parents because it's very hidden. I have a 6-year-old sister, believe it or not, and my mom and dad were over for dinner back in October. My mom started asking me about vaping and basically what it looks like and everything. So I was trying to explain to my mom, and my parents are very old, they're in their 60s, and I ended up showing my mom what it looked like, and she had no idea my sister had been doing it all along. She had the vape, or the Juul I should say, in her house, or in my parents' house, on her computer, and she passed it over as it was a USB. My parents, not knowing, believed it and took her for her word. When I started explaining to my mom kind of what it smells like, how it's a fruity smell, kind of like hand sanitizer, foaming soaps, my mom started to realize that my sister had been doing it all along in the house. So it's kind of a real situation right now, and it's a big problem. As law enforcement, we have a big issue with it because it's hard to detect. As kids smoking in a parking lot, you can smell it right away. If kids were smoking a couple cigarettes, or even with marijuana, if kids are smoking a joint in a car, you can smell it real quick, right? In its raw form, you can smell it. Unfortunately, with the THC vapes and vapes in general, they're not traceable. Our canines can still hit on them, they can detect the THC in it, but as law enforcement, it's really hard for us to smell it. It doesn't have that odor as if you were to smoke a joint right now in front of me in the room. It's become a problem in the schools. The kids can smoke real quick, whether they're in the bathroom, getting off the school bus, walking into the classroom, and it's not really traceable, it's not detectable. So it's obviously a big problem right now. We're working with the schools to get this stuff taken care of right now. And we're also working a lot with the, sounds crazy, but 5th grade, we do LEAD, Law Enforcement Against Drugs. It's kind of similar to the DARE program, a little bit better. We started introducing it into the 5th grade program, talking about the dangers of it, and what's kind of expected. Like everything else, when you guys were kids, and your parents were kids, smoking was cool. You can do it, it was healthy, there's benefits there. Vaping's the same thing. It came out, hit the streets real hard, it was supposed to be really good for you, the safe alternative to smoking, but it hasn't been around long enough for people to really figure out what the negative effects are. And as it's been around for a couple of years now, you're going to start to see things. Just watched a presentation a couple weeks back. They're going to start gearing kids to have emphysema by the age of 20 from vaping. So it's obviously a serious problem, and as parents, you really got to kind of realize exactly what they look like and the effects that it can have on your kids. It's not like smoking a cigarette where you have one and you're done. You can literally smoke an entire vape cartridge, which is the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes. So I'm going to turn it over to the expert here, and she's going to kind of go more into this. All right?
Thank you, Officer Cruz. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Great. My name's Tom Letson. I'm the Student Assistance Coordinator at Middletown High School South. It's great to see everyone out tonight to learn a little bit more about this growing issue. Obviously, in the high schools and middle schools, we've known about this issue like other public schools across the country for years now. And finally, the FDA in September defined it as an epidemic, so it's getting a lot more media attention, and that's a good thing. Okay, so today we're well representative from our schools. We have a student assistance coordinator that is responsible for substance abuse education, intervention, and referral, which would include vaping. And now we have a turn to nicotine addiction, unfortunately, at very young ages. And we really weren't dealing with that too much at the high school level, and definitely not at the middle school level for years. And now we're dealing with it again. So I'm happy to be here with our high school SAC from North, okay, Jacqueline Duca, and one of our middle school SACs, Christine Black from Bayshore. And we want to welcome all our administrators that are present today as well. Just a couple things before I introduce our guest speaker. The bottle cappers, if you're familiar, bottle cappers are one of the oldest peer-to-peer education groups in the county, and that's where high school students from North and South are trained to go down into the lower levels and teach kids about drug and alcohol prevention. This year, for the first time, every middle school student on the same day received an hour of vaping prevention instruction, by their high school peers. And it was a real big deal. That happened on February 7th. And I'm hopeful that if you have a middle schooler, they came home and they were parroting a lot of the things that were said in that classroom that day. Like vaping is just, it misleads you to think that it's water vapor, like a pot boiling on a stove. It's not water vapor, it's aerosol. And aerosol is liquid particles suspended in a gas. And so when kids are vaping, that's really what they're taking in. And they're taking in ultrafine particles that are left behind in your lungs. And these are the things now that we're going to be teaching kids, and they'll be parenting it. But you guys need to know. You guys need to know it because with this problem, it's you're one of a third. You're a third. It's parents, the schools, and peers. Okay, peers of kids that are getting into this at such young ages. Okay, so that's why we're so happy to see so many of you here tonight. And we are very fortunate to have our guest speaker, Ms. Nikki Francis from Wellspring, the Center for Prevention. She's a very hot commodity right now. All schools want her to come. She does such a great job. So we'd like to introduce her and welcome her. Thank you, Nikki.
Good evening. Son, can you hear me? Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nikki Francis. I think I have the coolest job in the whole entire world because all day, every day, I get to go in and out of schools and talk to young people. But besides talk to young people, I really listen to them. I get to listen to what's real for them, what's really going on. And so then I go back to my office and I figure out, working with DEA agents, police officers that we work with, emergency room doctors, doing research, all of those things. And then I put programs together that make sense not only for young people, but for adults. And so when I'm not teaching young people, I do a lot of professional development. I do tons of community programs, parent programs, and I'm lucky enough to be part of Middletown. I've been blessed to be here a number of years through the Municipal Alliance and the Project Plus program over that used to be Exploited Hall, which is at the Senior Center now, for fifth graders who are going into middle school into that transition year. So I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm glad that you're all here. When I'm not talking to them, I speak at tons of state conferences, and I was asked to speak at my first international and national conference. So if any of your kids get in trouble for talking too much, maybe they'll have a job like me one day. They'll get paid to talk. There is hope for them, maybe. I like to do my presentations probably a little different than normal presenters. I do have show and tell items, so I will show you. I will keep them up here after and wait for questions. Lots of parents ask me if they can take pictures. Absolutely, you may at the end, and I'll stand here. I like to open it up during, if you have a question that you're not understanding. If it's a question at the end, that's different. But if I'm saying something that doesn't make sense to you, please just raise your hand at the time. It won't throw me off. I do this presentation probably 50 times in a month. I'd rather you get what you need out of being here than having me just stand up here and talk. So I want to start off with this slide, because what's going to happen for a lot of you is that at some point you're going to start to feel like your brain is going to explode, right? We're going to talk about things, there's going to be tons of information brought at you. And then the other thing that we like to do as parents, and maybe I am one of them also, is this guy's face right here, go into the car with your students that you dragged here and start just kind of going at them like, do you know about vape? Does somebody know vape? Do you know what's going on about vape? All of those kind of things that we do to them. I'm going to ask that we not do that today. And take this information and use this opportunity, if you brought your child here, to just start those open conversations, because that's really what's going to help. Regardless of what substance I talk about, We do know for sure that the #1 deterrent for any youth involved in any kind of substance is a clear message sent from a parent. A very clear, concise message of what is acceptable for you and your family and what you expect from them. So please remember that, regardless of what substance, that is the clearest thing. Just some other things you need to know. The average age of first use in New Jersey is 9. Okay? In Monmouth County, you're a little bit higher, it's 14. So that's that transition year from like 8th grade to 9th grade. We do know that transition years, we see a huge increase in lots of things. So that 5th grader to 6th grade, 8th to 9th, and then again when they're graduating and going into college. We also know that 1 in 5 of us in this room know or love somebody who has a substance use disorder. So yes, there's a lot of you in here, but that's a lot of us who are really dealing with someone who we know or love who has a substance use disorder. And why I say that is because it's not uncommon. It's something that's real, right? It's something that's real that a lot of people are going through. Youth who have one parent who has a substance use disorder, they have a 50 times more likely chance of having a substance use disorder themselves. If both of their parents have a substance use disorder, it goes up to 90%. And why I share that with you is because this is a real conversation you may have to have with your youth if you know that there's a family history for you. That if you know there's something different in your family than maybe the person sitting right next to you, it's a real conversation that has to happen. Yes?
Given some of these facts you have here, would you consider cannabis a gateway drug to opioid or heroin?
So what I'm going to talk about is the concentrates that are being used in vape, because what I was asked to come here tonight to talk about was vaping and concentrates in particular. We don't call it a gateway drug anymore, sir. We just know that there are lots of things that kids can get substances that they can be involved in. Okay, so that's what I'm going to focus on today, and I am going to cover edibles, just a small amount so parents understand what's out there if we become a legal marijuana state. That's really, but at the end I can talk to you tons about that.
I'm more interested in education, public, medical cannabis.
Right, I'm not going to really cover that today, though.
Right, but
Okay.
I'm a medical cannabis patient, and our concerns are that the message of the Board of Health is not getting out.
Right, I would ask you to just listen to my message, which is just a message of education, and then if there's more that you want to say, I would be welcome to have that. Fantastic, thank you. Also, we know that 15 is a magic age for a lot of young people. Their bodies are not just growing really quick at that time, but their brains and their pathways are growing. So any kind of substance that they put into their body is going to affect them differently than if you are an adult. It's just the truth because of all of those brain messages. And every time there is this false sense of dopamine shot, what kind of happens is those pathways get switched up a little, and then it actually starts to change the chemistry of the brain. So we do know that when I talk to young people and they say, Miss Nikki, I'm going to go to a party and drink, or Miss Nikki, I'm going to use a vape, my statement is always the same. The longer you can wait, the better chances of you are that you will not have an addiction. Now I wish that I had a magic wand or a crystal ball, and I could look and say, all of you on this side, you're gonna try it, it's gonna be fantastic. All of you are gonna try it, it's not gonna, you're gonna be okay after a while. This group, it's gonna be a while, but this group, I don't have a crystal ball, that's not how addiction works. So the only true statement I can say in front of all of you today, and the message you should share to your child is this. If you do not put a substance into your body, that is the only 100% way that we know that you will never become addicted to it. We also know here that the brain stops developing at 25. That is why we put certain bills and legislation into place so that we can try to use that age as much as we can. So, legal drinking age is 21, okay? How about if we become a recreational marijuana state, how old? It will be 21. And how about anything tobacco or nicotine? Great, that's the one where we hear tons of different. We used to be 18, it moved up to 19, and now it is 21, okay? So our state is one of few states that has a 21. It is a purchasing law that says you have to be 21 years old to purchase anything tobacco related and or nicotine. Now what I want you to think about while we'll start to talk about vape in a second is that all of these products up here, all of these vape fluids, none of them have traditional tobacco in them. So nicotine grows naturally in tobacco. So all of this is synthetic nicotine. So I wish I could stand in front of you and tell you exactly how it's all made. We don't have all of that information. So we're not sure of all the chemicals that they are putting in to create the synthetic nicotine. Just something for you to think about. And then finally, the bottom one, which I think is super important for all of us as parents to also understand, is that we know that there's often a co-occurring disorder for mental health and substance abuse. We see a huge spike in mental health with young people in transition years. And so, again, if someone is suffering from a mental health issue, then we also know that sometimes they will use substances to numb out or try to self-medicate, which again then causes another issue besides just a mental health concern. So just out of this conversation, not only about vaping or other chemicals being put in their body, we really have to talk about mental health. And if a young person is not okay, to say, hey, I'm not okay, and understand that that could also lead to a substance use disorder if not taken care of. A big question I get from a lot of adults is, how are they getting it? How is it possible for them to get this information or get this stuff in front of us here? Well, here's the thing. If any of your kids are lucky or blessed, they don't really need stuff. So when holidays come or their birthday comes, what we say to them is very simple: get them a Visa gift card or get them an Amazon gift card so they can purchase whatever they want. Online, a Visa gift card is a credit card. Okay? Most of the sites that you can go on, you'll see two of the sites up there, they don't ask you for your age. You click on, you put in the Visa gift card, and it's a credit card. Some of this stuff is being delivered right to your home without you having any knowledge that it's being placed to your home. The other thing is Amazon. Some of these products up here were bought on Amazon.com. And again, an Amazon gift card is a credit card and can also be shipped. Now the other thing up here is that little yellow with the ghost. Anyone know what that is? Tell me. Snapchat. I should ask the older people in the audience if they knew what that was, right? That's a whole different presentation I do about social media for them. But yeah, Snapchat, my friends, is where a lot of young people are getting some stuff, especially in schools. So they've kind of created their own black market using Snapchat. Someone will go out, they will purchase this pods, let's say, and then they will go on Snapchat on their story, they'll make up meeting places in school, and they'll sell them each pod for a certain amount of money. So they're making a ton of money selling products. I was just in a middle school doing a professional development, and this was a middle school. They said that the trend in their school through Snapchat was that they would sell $1 or $2 for a hit in the bathroom off a vape. Okay, so not even a whole cartridge, just being able to go in and try it out. So again, they're using that because, not that Snapchat disappears, we know that nothing really goes away forever, but for everybody else's eye, it'll kind of go away. So they're using that, how to communicate in schools to figure that out. So, I'm not going to talk about all of these, really. All I'm going to talk about today is the end system. They used to be called electronic nicotine delivery systems. What we do call them now are electronic inhalant devices, because we do know that not just nicotine products are being inhaled, we also know, unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you're on, whichever side you are, but for us as youth, we know that young people are using concentrates in those vape. And I will cover concentrates for you so you can understand what they are and how they're being used or concealed from all of us. I will also cover just edibles, because I think it's super important to understand if we become a legal marijuana state, what will also happen is that we become a legal concentrate state and an edible state. And our concern in our agency is that it will be marketed and young people will be attracted to it just by marketing techniques. And so it's important for everyone in this room to understand how they would maybe affect youth differently than adults. And then finally, I will cover synthetic marijuana, because that is not THC or marijuana at all. And it's important for you to know that it's out there and that kids can get their hands on that also. So, if you look on top here, you'll see that the first one is an actual cigarette. The next two are e-cigarettes. What they are devices that are made by cigarette companies that have nicotine flavoring and look like cigarettes. Those are sold in your mass markets like 7-Elevens and Wawa's. The only other product that's really sold in those mass markets is the Juul, because that is an actual American company, right? And also, if you did not know, Marlboro, they invested $20 million into Juul. Okay, so big tobacco is involved in that company, and I'm sure others will start to roll out also. Then in the middle, you have one-time use devices. What I mean by that is that it's a device that has the fluid already built in. Once that fluid is gone, then what happens is the whole device gets thrown out. And then finally you have the refillables at the end. They can look very different. Here are just two different versions of them, okay? These here, just so you also understand, are considered drug paraphernalia. Now we do know that the Juul is manipulated and can contain concentrates. The one-time use is hardly ever really manipulated because it's cheap and it's not worth the effort. So I want to start with the one-time use. Now if I hold all three of these up, and I know some of you are in the back, but if I hold all three of these up and you look, first glance, they look like pens. It's where the term vape pen came from. If this was in a backpack or maybe even on a desk, you wouldn't think twice. One of these is a vape pen, two of these are traditional pens. So this one here is the one-time use vape. Okay, looks almost identical, and again, at the end, I'll keep them up here for you. So lots of times I'll have young people say, listen, Miss Nikki, I'm only going to use this one-time device. How bad could it be? Can I pick on you real quick? How many puffs does that say? 800 puffs. There's about 800 puffs in this one-time use. Scientifically, it only takes about 100 inhales of nicotine to become addicted to it. Okay, so one-time device has a lot more nicotine than scientifically it would take to become addicted to it. Now, when you look up here at this table or any of these things that I'm talking about up here, please know that nothing is regulated. We were supposed to start regulating devices and juices in February of 2018. It has been pushed back to 2022. So I cannot stand in front of you like I can for cigarettes and say 4,000 chemicals, 200 cancer causing, list them all. All the information I have for you today is the most up-to-date information from people who are doing minor research products because there is nothing out there being regulated. It's hard to get a lot of funding to do that. So we do know some things, but I can't stand in front of you and tell you I know everything. Only been around about 10 years and really popular the past 6. That's nothing when we're talking about chemicals. Okay, now this is the newer generation that has kind of rolled out. The top one is the Juul. If you've never seen the Juul, this is what it looks like. It looks almost identical to a USB drive. And with that, you need to use their pods. So you'll see the colorful colors on the pods. When they're put into the device, all you will see is black. Okay, so you won't see any of those colors. What's happening for a lot of schools, not just your schools, everywhere in the state, is that kids are carrying Chromebooks around so they can do their work, but it charges right in the side of the Chromebook. Okay, just like this. And a lot of times adults, not meaning that they don't know what they're doing, it's just that they walk past, they don't notice that it's not a USB, that's an actual Juul. So again, girls, where they'll hide them, up here, to where they put them, or in the yoga pants that have those little secret compartments, and guys will just put them in their pocket. Okay, now there's going to be a little bit of a backlash with Juul, which I'll talk about in marketing for you, but just like there's Coke or Pepsi that come out, on the bottom there you'll see the Flare, and this is the Fix. It looks almost identical. For a lot of schools, the Fix has become more popular, and I'll explain why, because the FDA is coming down on Juul pretty hard right now. So Fixes and Flares, so again, I tell you that terminology because it's almost become like an adverb to be Juuling, fixing, flaring, or if you hear Fix or Flare, they're all doing the same exact thing. They're just different devices, okay, but it's all vaping. The other one that's becoming quite popular right now is the Saurian Drop. This one here looks almost identical to a highlighter. Okay, they do sell skins that they can customize them and make them their own. For a lot of them, I don't have really big hands, but how they will hide this one is they'll hold it right in their hand like this. They'll stick the mouth tip right between their fingers, and they can sit right in class, take a hit of it, and then they'll open their shirt, and they'll blow into the shirt so that it's hidden and that teachers wouldn't be able to see it. They'll also act like they're going into a bag, looking for something, and then they will exhale into the bag also. Lots of parents want to come down and say administration or schools, are not doing their part. After today, I think you're going to understand that it's very easily concealed, and it's very hard to notice. Now, when you see someone vape, you see a big plume, but it dissipates super quickly because it's an aerosol. And so once that plume comes, it's almost automatically gone. And so it's very hard, even though administrators are in and out of bathrooms every day, even though they have monitors outside, even though some schools have, they're actually using those devices to scan kids' IDs that I'm at. All of those things are good, but again, it's super hard because it's so easy for them to hide. So how does it work? Just so you can kind of understand, if you've ever used a humidifier, you put the water in, you plug it in, and then the mist comes out. Same kind of concept on the device. You put the fluid into it, it heats it up, and then you can inhale it, and then the vape comes out, and then you exhale. So it's the same kind of concept. Different batteries will break it down smaller, so lots of times, this one here, this device, probably about $80 in a vape store. This one here was bought in a convenience store. This one was only $30. So I want to talk a minute about the marketing. I know that some of my prior speakers before I got up here kind of touched on it, but understand that the two top are from the 40s and 50s talking about smoking ads, and that doctors and dentists recommended that it's healthier for you and it's a better alternative and it'll reduce stress. And then we know through years and years and years of research where we've become. Please know that our efforts worked as parents and educators. For the first time in US history, tobacco sales has decreased, but vape has tripled. It's $1 billion industry right now. And so if you ask many students if they would use a traditional cigarette, most of them would tell you absolutely not. If you ask them if they would try vaping, it's not as clear of a message of no. Okay, so the marketing out there is telling them that it's a safer alternative, it's not as bad as a traditional cigarette. The truth is we don't have all of that information. So this one here on the bottom, this is actually an ad from this year for vape. Same kind of concepts. If you did not know, when Big Tobacco got sued about 8 years ago, there were certain regulations put into place because we know that Big Tobacco was targeting youth. Some of those are they cannot have any ads on TV. The only ads you see are truth and advertising ads. We also know they cannot do anything on the radio. We also know they cannot go on the internet and do any of that kind of advertising. Also, billboards cannot be certain areas around schools. When we're talking about advertising, when we're talking about vape, please know there are no regulations. It's the wild, wild west. So, because of that, what is happening, if you haven't heard on the radio, there's a Juul ad. Online, if your kids Google something related to vape, what will automatically happen is they will be inundated with ads. Not only just the ads, but also the links so that they can buy the products. So please know that those regulations are not in place as of today. Question? No? Okay. Here's just some more, so you can see friends don't let friends buy cigarettes. I love my lungs, so please vape. Again, the marketing is definitely pushing that it's a healthier alternative or a healthy thing. Now, I talked a little bit about Juul on the bottom there. You'll notice that their people that they're using in their ads all look like high school students. The FDA came at Juul about a month and a half ago, and said that we do not like your marketing techniques. Not only did you make a device that young people will be drawn to because it's looks like tech, but also you're using young people. So to play nice in the sandbox, what Juul has done is that they said, we will take out the fruit flavor. So the cherry, the vanilla, and the mango flavor, we'll take those out of stores, and they'll only be able to get them online. So that is why it's important for you to understand when we say fix or flare, why that would become the newer thing, and the Juul's gonna kind of take a back seat. It's gonna be harder for them to get those fruit flavored juices. Here too, a lot of young people don't even know who Joe Camel is. That was part of the regulation too, that they cannot use cartoon characters to try to entice young people to their products. So you'll see here, this is a vape on the bottom, that's a vape logo, and then on top they even chose to use Chris Kingle in their ads, okay? Now some of you are like, what? But yes, that's the kind of advertising that's happening. Now if you look at these fluids up here, this one here is Pancake Man. You'll see it looks like a cartoon character. On the side, no eggs, milk, or water needed, just vape your pancakes. It'll be better for you. How about this? What candy does this one look like? Where's my kids? What candy does this look like? No? Someone said it over there. I don't know who said it. Airheads. Somebody said Airheads. Yes, this was called Vape Head. All right, this one's not hard. What kind of, does this one look like? What kind of cereal? Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Yeah, she knew that one. She's like, I got this one, Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And then how about this candy? Sour Patch Kids. It's called Sour Treat. Again, a lot of the marketing is for candy flavored, flu flavored, dessert flavored. That would be really attractive to youth. We do know 1 in 3 high school students in the 2017 Monitoring the Future study said that they have tried vape 1 in 3. We do know that those high exposure on ads, we do have an increased calls on poison control. Please understand that because none of these things are regulated, a lot of the bottles coming from overseas are not childproof. So if your high school student knows that this is not Sour Patch Kids, if they have youngers or brothers or sisters, they might not realize it. And understand that the fluid, if it gets onto your skin, can go through your skin into your blood, and you can get nicotine that way also. You don't have to inhale it or ingest it to get the nicotine poisoning. We also know nothing's regulated. So when somebody says, well, it's 0% nicotine, I often look at young people and say, do you know that? Because I don't know that. Because they can put whatever they want on a box and say it is what it is, or what it isn't, because nobody is having a checks and balance on any of these. Kind of think of the hoverboard craze. A couple years ago, some of them were very safe, and some caused fires. Same kind of thing. We're having a huge increase in devices malfunctioning and causing severe damage to a lot of people. We had our first death in the U.S. over the summer from a Florida man with a device, a metal piece got lodged into his throat. We also know that most of them come from overseas, and big tobacco is definitely involved. So I share this with you. If it'll pop up. There you go. I'm not going to show the video, but there is a great website out there called #Don'tGetVapedIn or Don't Get Vaped In. It's a New Jersey website. It just came out this month. It has tons of information. That video is available. You can share that information with your young person if that's something. But those are just snippets of what can happen when a device malfunctions. Okay, we do know that in Freehold Mall we had a girl's purse explode over the summer from her device malfunctioning also. A big argument we get from a lot of young people is that it's just water and flavor. How bad can it be? So when asked, about 51, almost 52% of high school students said that. The reality is that we don't know everything that's in it, and it's not just water and flavoring. In fact, these are the things we know are in there, and some of them are quite disturbing once we're getting that information. So the top one there is formaldehyde. So when this fluid is being heated into these devices, it is turning into a formaldehyde, cancer-causing agent that is being ingested. We also know that there's 2 other carcinogens as of now that we can prove are in most of these fluids. We also know lead. So a lot of these bottles that aren't being regulated also have lead in them. The fluid sits into the lead bottles, and then that's being ingested. Diacetyl is a flavoring agent. When you ingest it, it does not have the same effect as when you inhale it. And so we are having a very serious lung disease directly attached to that flavoring agent called popcorn lung, which I'll share with you in a second. And then finally, nicotine. The nicotine levels are quite high. Most people don't realize how much nicotine is in these products. In fact, Juul created something called nicotine salt. So in their vape fluid, they have something called nicotine salt, which decreases the negative side effects of nicotine so that the burning of the throat wouldn't be able to ingest more. So one of these pods, not all 4 of these pods, one pod is equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. We have high schoolers that are doing 2 to 3 pods a day. Okay. Lots of adults ask me, how long will it take to do a pod? The reality is I can't answer that for you. It depends how much they're using it and how long they're taking it for the day. So some of them, it could be a pod for 3 days, it could be a pod for a week, it could be 1 pod, 2 pods, 3 pods, it depends where they are. The bigger concern, so you understand, is that lots of adults, the question I always get is, why would they be so stupid to bring it into school? Don't they know that they can get into school, in trouble in school? Don't they know the policy, that they can be suspended, that they can be drug tested? The reality is, how many of us know someone who uses traditional tobacco products and goes outside when it's 0 degrees out and uses a cigarette? Right? If you are addicted to nicotine, and we know that nicotine is just as addictive in the brain's receptor sites as cocaine and heroin. So if you are addicted to nicotine, you will do anything you can to get the hit of that nicotine. So it's not that our kids are stupid, it's not that they're trying to get over, it's the fact that they are truly addicted to a substance after they've been using nicotine. So let's look at my bottle here. So this bottle of Sour Dream, if you look at the box, which most people would not pay attention to, it says 6 mg's on it. 6 mg's stands for the amount of nicotine in a 30 milliliter bottle. So for most of us, we would think that this whole bottle has 6 milligrams of nicotine. What it actually means is per milliliter or per about 20 droplets. And so if you're looking at this refillable where my thumb is actually only 1 ml. That's equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. So if you're looking at this whole bottle, you're looking at about 6,000 puffs, 600 cigarettes, or 30 packs of cigarettes. That's the equivalent of nicotine in that bottle. And so let's talk cost, because that's something that a lot of people think about too. This bottle costs $28. Okay, so it's equivalent to about a pack of cigarettes, 30 packs of cigarettes. You can see that it's much more affordable than traditional tobacco. There's some other marketing things that are out there, just so you're aware. On top, I'm not picking on any particular celebrity, but celebrity is a draw for a lot of young people. That one happens to be Snoop Dogg's, but many of them have their own brands out there. You'll also see that the maple one and the vanilla, that's actually being kind of marketed as a diet tool, especially for young girls and body image. It actually says on the box, curb cravings, lose weight, 0 calories, 50 servings. On the bottom there, it looks just like an albuterol inhaler. That's actually a vape, sold online for $65. The one in the middle there is a newer one that's becoming quite popular. It's about the size of a credit card. The mouth tip is on the one side and the rechargeable site is on the other. Here's 2 different versions of that, but you can see they're pretty thin. Look like credit cards, a little bit thicker only. And then finally on the bottom there's a site called Vaporware. So we have lots of kids who wear hoodies who might be chewing on the strings. That's actually a tube, so they can inhale. The wildest thing I saw from Vaporware was actually those drawstring bags that kids like to use. The one string is actually a tube that they can inhale and exhale out of, so that all of that exhale will go right back into the bag. And it looks just like a drawstring bag. This is the Vaporware site. Did you need me to go back? I saw someone take a picture. I'll go back. I saw a camera. Good? Okay. That's the Vaporware site. Just so you can understand, it does have a little warning on there. It says you must be 21 years old to enter. As soon as you hit enter, there's nothing else. They don't even have to try to use their math skills to try to come up with a year that makes sense. All right, it's just that they have access to it. They were just having a big sale. You could get a sweatshirt and a pair of pants for $40, so it's not crazy expensive. Again, those Visa gift cards are credit cards online. I don't want to downplay social media either, because it does have an impact. Up on top there, that's the World Vapor Summit. Okay, so again, I know YouTube is a quite popular site, not only for youth, but for adults. I get lots of my clips from YouTube too that I use. But please know what's out there and what's on YouTube and what your children have access to if you're not aware. So they can get all of that information on YouTube sites on how to create all of those exhaling little circles and all of those kind of things. The guy up on top at the Vapor Summit in Middlesex County, he actually won. So his vape shop has become quite a popular spot for young people to hang out to meet him. And this is the popcorn lung that I spoke about. There's that diacetyl. So it's called popcorn lung for a reason. When microwave popcorn first became a thing in the US, this chemical, this flavoring agent, was in microwave popcorn. What was happening is the workers in the factory started to get a lung disease that nobody had ever seen about, and that was from inhaling the fumes of that chemical. When 51 of them were tested, 47 of them hadn't. Most of them are found in those candy-coated, all of these dessert-flavored ones, those sweet flavored ones. So a lot of them are containing this diacetyl. So you can understand what popcorn lung is. A long-term effect of traditional tobacco smoking is emphysema and or COPD. What we're seeing, unfortunately, from young people in high school who have started vaping in high school, by the time they're getting to college age, they have contracted popcorn lung. It affects the alveoli and also the airways, which increase the mucus in their lungs. What's important for you all to understand that this is an irreversible disease. So once you get popcorn lung, there's nothing you can do medically to get rid of it, only manage it with oxygen and or medicine. So we're seeing a much shorter long-term effect in vaping than we did for traditional tobacco products. There's some other side effects of vaping, that dry mouth. A lot of them contain chemicals. I told you about the nicotine salt. So dry mouth, dizziness, cough, dry skin, eyes, nosebleeds, all of those can be common side effects from vaping also. Some other things, it is a sweet smell. So if any of you, I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old. When my daughter comes down sometimes, I say that like Emily has left the room, but Ariana Grande is still hanging out because her perfume is there for about an hour, right? So they put Bath & Body Works on. In the middle school, I was doing a professional development. They said that the big trend was young boys were carrying Bath & Body Works sprays with them. They didn't put the connection together, but it was easier for them to hide the sweet smell of vaping if they were spraying that stuff also. So again, any of those sweet smelling stuff. Also, if someone's sensitive to caffeine, that will be increased from vaping. We also know that if there's extra equipment. So all of these are rechargeable. All of the chargers look quite different. They don't look like traditional phone chargers. So if you saw a lot of chargers that you didn't know what they were for, that might be kind of a sign that someone is using a vape equipment. And then those wires and whisks and all of that would be for the big ones here that you make and you customize with mouse tips and everything. And then if someone had nicotine poisoning, so again, not only young children, but we saw an increase with pets in nicotine poisoning also because it smells super sweet. They want to go and lick it. Please know sweating, vomiting, confusion, diminished pulse rate, and difficulty breathing are all common when you have nicotine poisoning. And then important for all of you as parents in the room to understand, continued e-cigarette use not only can lead to nicotine addiction, but it also makes other drugs more pleasurable in the brain, like methamphetamine and cocaine. Oh, thank you for saying that. So there's not a ton of research out there, but we are getting a lot. So we work with Robert Wood Johnson. So we've seen in a lot of emergency room nurses across the country, there's some kind of thing that's happening with uncontrollable vomiting because it's affecting the stomach lining. So there's no name for it, like we have popcorn lung, there's not a name for it. That is a very common side effect right now. The stomach lining is being affected. Thank you for bringing that up.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
On those same lines. Not confusing folks, that's with Jules, nicotine, not with cannabis part.
Right, we haven't talked anything about any kind of concentrate yet. This is just vape fluid.
Sometimes the two get,
Nope, so yep, just to be clear, all of the stuff that I've talked about, all of those things are just from traditional vape fluid and or Jules fixes, whatever the brand you use, but only vape fluid. We haven't talked about concentrates yet. Any other questions about vape? Good? Okay, take a deep breath because we're halfway through, you're okay. Some of your faces are starting to scrunch up. It's gonna be all right, I promise. All right. So, if you did not know, we are a medical marijuana state. We are not a recreational marijuana state as of today. There is a big push in our state for that to happen, but it hasn't happened as of yet. What's important for you to know is that I don't have time to go yes, no, pro, against. What I do say whenever I do a presentation, and our stance as an agency, is that our concern is for adolescents because their brain is developing quite differently than an adult brain, and that it would be a public health concern for adolescents. And so we are medical, we are not recreational, but if we become a recreational marijuana state, that also means that concentrates become legal, and so do edibles. That's important for all of you to understand in this room, because if in your room, your stances that will not be in my home, it does not mean that their friend's house that they go to will have that same stance in their home. So it's just important for you to understand that that law does not just mean traditional THC marijuana, it also means concentrates and edibles. Now, a big argument we get from a lot of young people is that you cannot overdose on marijuana. The thing we want to really stress when we're talking about concentrates and edibles is that you can poison yourself, okay? Because it affects your body very differently than traditional marijuana, okay? And so for young people, it would be much easier for them to poison themselves.
Question.
Yes, sir?
Is that the message of the Board of Health sends? That cannabis can be poisonous to children?
I didn't say cannabis, I said concentrates and edibles can absolutely. We do know that in other states that have become legal, sir, that the number of people who have become, especially when we're talking about young kids, I said this is all when we're talking about adolescents and younger, that they absolutely can poison themselves because,
What age?
I'm saying younger children, adolescents, teenagers, can absolutely. When we get to edibles, I can explain why that could be an issue. So let's talk about edibles, so we can all understand. How many of us in here have ever had a Hershey bar? Okay. And if I was smart enough and brought you all a candy bar right now, you really like me, but how many of you would only eat one square? Some of you laugh, okay. So please understand when we talk about edibles, that there's a serving size for all edibles. Okay, most people do not pay attention to serving sizes, especially when we're talking about candy bars. So in a traditional edible, a THC-infused edible, what will happen is 1 square would be equivalent to about 10 to 15 milligrams of THC, which would be a joint or a blunt. When you're looking at a whole bar, it's about 100 milligrams of THC. Could be as high. When you inhale and when you ingest, it affects your body differently. So when you ingest it, it can take up to an hour for you to feel any effect. So if a young person was going to take it to feel an effect, and a half hour into it they don't feel anything, what do we think a lot of people might do? Take another one. So then instead of 100 milligrams of THC, they will have 200 milligrams of THC going through. Now in a middle school in Monmouth County in November, we had a young girl who went into the bathroom who thought it was just traditional vape fluid. Unfortunately for her, it was a concentrate and it had a high level in the vape that she was given. She went to school and into the classroom. She became dizzy and nauseous within 5 minutes. And then 10 minutes later, when she went to the nurse, she became unresponsive. Now, I'm not saying that every concentrate is going to make someone unresponsive. What I am saying is that every single person absolutely affects differently. Just like in my family, if I give my kids Benadryl, one of them gets knocked out, one of them gets wild, right? It affects us all differently. For this young girl, she became unresponsive very quickly. The concentrates are much higher, which I'll talk about in a minute, but understand why that effect level is much closer when we're talking about these two things. Question?
I don't know what THC.
So THC is the mind-altering substance in marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
These are concentrates. We're going to talk about in a minute. Edibles. These are all THC-infused products. It's a THC-infused, yes. Okay? So on top there, that would be THC-infused soda. And then you'll see there like things like Pop-Tarts, and that doesn't say Pop-Tarts, it says Pop-Tarts. If we become a recreational marijuana state, these things will also be available through dispensaries.
Now, not the age 21.
Correct. Correct. But again, I just want you to have that conversation with your young person, because if in your home you're not going to carry them, it doesn't mean if they go to somebody else's home it might not be
And I
there.
had bought it when I was very young.
Okay? All right. And so, we'll talk about concentrates. So concentrates are created with chemicals, high heat, and traditional marijuana through an extraction process that creates concentrates which can be used into these vape devices. That is also why a lot of schools that we go into now that are changing their vaping policies very quickly as this is unfolding for all of you as parents and also as administrators and school districts, is that now most schools, and not all schools, but lots of them, the minute they are found with any kind of vape device, they're automatically being drug tested. Because there is very hard to know if it's just vape fluid and or if there's a concentrate in it. So even in a Juul, what's happening is they'll use the fluid Then they will take a syringe and put a tiny hole into this device, and they will put concentrates into the Joule systems also. Okay, so this one can be manipulated also. So they look kind of different, all of the concentrates. The first one there, that is a fluid. It's called vape juice. Then you have butter in the middle, wax, and then the bottom is shatter. All of them look different. All of them do the same thing. Different amounts of THC are in them because the concentrates, because the extraction process is different for all of them. So the one in the middle, butter, often where they will conceal it or hide it would be in the Burt's Beeswax containers, the lip balm. Okay, just so you're aware. And the shatter, the best way for me to explain the consistency of that is if you took a Jolly Rancher and you smashed it in those tiny pieces with them off, they're kind of clear, hard, that's what it would look like. I show you hightimes.com because again, when I was in high school it was a magazine, now it's a YouTube channel, and as adults, again, those things are accessible to young people. Whenever we do research, whenever we talk to parents or kids, what we always say is to get all of the information from all sides so that you can make an educated choice, right? But know that if this is available for you to go to, also young people can go onto it and get information. So I will share with you, she breaks down concentrates. Again, I share it with you just so you can have those conversations of what's out there on the internet for your young person.
Hi there, this is Allie, High Times concentrate correspondent. Over the last few years, concentrates have become the biggest thing to happen to pop culture since, well, pot. But as the popularity of dabs continues to grow, so are questions about the many forms these concentrates can take. All concentrates are made through a process called extraction, where marijuana's main ingredients are concentrated into an essential oil. The main three solvents used to create dabs are butane, CO2, and isopropyl alcohol. After extraction, the resulting dabs can look very different. Today, we're taking a closer look at the three main types of concentrates: shatter, butter, and oil. Oil is a gooey, sticky liquid that can be kind of hard to handle, while butter has a creamier consistency from being whipped. Finally, shatter is smooth, clear, and solid. All three can be used in vape pens and oil rigs. But finding the right concentrate for you is a matter of preference. Shatter is the purest and most potent form because it involves a second extraction process that removes fats, lipids, and waxes. This can result in over 80% THC. However, it also means that some of those tasty terpenes are removed. Terpenes are responsible for marijuana's unique smell. Combined with THC, terpenes create the flavor of the pod or concentrate you're smoking. Butter retains more terpenes, so it tends to be more flavorful but less potent, with THC percentages in the 70s. Oil tends to be the least refined of the three. This form, also known as honey oil or butane hash oil, can retain a full flavor profile. However, THC levels are generally less consistent. Unfortunately, availability often determines what type of concentrate you smoke, but hopefully this little guide helps those lucky enough to have a choice. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to hightimes.com for more dab-related content, including how to select a nail and a rig.
So just some things to think about when we're talking about concentrates. There are increased pesticides because not all of those chemicals that you spoke about are all burned off in the extraction process. What's important for parents to understand is those terpenes, or what is the traditional skunk smell of traditional marijuana, will be reduced greatly when we're talking about concentrates. And so that is why sometimes in schools they can even be used without people catching on to the smell of it because those terpenes are reduced. Also, we do see an increased potential for withdrawal and abuse because those THC levels are much higher than traditional THC. And finally, some of the side effects are much different than traditional THC. So now I'm going to just end tonight with synthetic synthetic, what they call fake marijuana or herbal mixture. Please understand, this is the part where parents become very upset pretty quickly. The two substances that I will talk about, I will really talk about the top one, not so much the bath salts tonight. Please understand that there is nothing illegal in them, okay? They are just synthetic chemicals. So the way I can explain is, how many of us have used sugar? Yes? Splenda, Sweet and Low, Equal. So what happens is the top one, which is fake marijuana, or they call it dry herbal mix, what'll happen, it's a plant-based material from overseas that is dried and then sprayed with chemicals. None of them containing any THC or marijuana, just chemicals. When the DEA says that one of those chemical compounds is illegal, what will happen is they will take that chemical compound out at the lab and then put another chemical on top of it to create or mimic the high. So every time something becomes illegal, they'll take it out and change it up. So it's always kind of like a circle of trying to play catch up. Please know that if you take a urine screen, these do not come up in a traditional urine screen. Why I share that with you is because sometimes this is a draw for young people because it's not shown up on a urine screen, especially for athletes who might be random drug tested in certain schools. This will not come up. Traditional marijuana or concentrates will, you would know if it was a concentrate because the THC level would be quite high compared to traditional marijuana. But a test of this would be about $600 and no school system would ever use that. It's just not something that they could manage, right? Just so you all are aware of why it's out there. It will also say not for human consumption on it. And then on the bottom, the bath salts, if you ask me what is the scariest high, I would tell you it's that. I've worked with police officers that said it takes 4 to 5 people to take somebody down. Again, it is not the bath bombs that we put into our bathtubs. These are drugs that are chemicals that are put together to mimic highs. But again, nothing is illegal in them. Okay, so we do know in New Jersey that the bath salts are not as prevalent in New Jersey as in other states, but we do know that the fake marijuana is very high on the list in the Rutgers, New Brunswick area. Okay, we do know that for sure. So it's here in the state of New Jersey, just so you are aware that it is out there, and both of these are available online also. Just so you can kind of see what some of the packaging looks like. Scooby Snacks, barely legal, says Medusa turned to stone. All of those would be that fake marijuana or potpourri. Here's some of the symptoms and here are some of the effects of that fake marijuana. Again, there's no CBD oil and or THC in it. It's just plant-based with chemicals on it. And then this is what some of the bath salts would look like. Just so you know, when we're talking about the synthetic marijuana, over the summer we had a rash of deaths in New York City. It was being cut with rat poisoning. Okay, so it's just a chemical that they put in. And in Connecticut, we had one day in August where 78 people overdosed from synthetic marijuana in one day. Right out of Yale. That was actually when tested, cut with fentanyl. Okay, so again, those things are out there and cut with other things. Yes? So when we're talking about the fake marijuana, it would be smoked, either rolled or in a pipe or a bong. But when we're talking about the salts, they are normally snorted and or mixed with something else and smoked. Here's the sign of those bath salts. Again, probably for me, out of all the years I've done this, I've done prevention work for 20 years. That is probably the darkest of drugs that I've seen. Aliens, devils, self-mutilation is quite common because they feel bugs or see bugs, suicidal ideations, and suicidal completions. Then just some other things that are trending right now, just so you know that they're here in New Jersey. We do know that I talked about fentanyl. I won't talk the whole time about fentanyl with you, but that is a drug that is often cut, especially when we're talking about overdoses and clusters. It's not necessarily the heroin, but it's the fentanyl that is being cut with. That is 100 times more potent than morphine. Carfentanil is 1,000 times more potent than morphine. A single grain of that can kill you. That has not been found in New Jersey yet. Ohio and Florida, we have seen it. Nicotine toothpicks are becoming a big trend right now, so you can suck on the toothpick and get nicotine, and then also you can bite onto it. Why is it becoming trendy? Because a lot of young people are becoming addicted to nicotine. They don't want to bring vapes into school to get in trouble, so now they have access to those toothpicks. We also know, I talked to you, in New Jersey, unfortunately, we're seeing in some areas that some of the marijuana that is being sold as traditional marijuana is also being laced with heroin. And that is from our DEA and also police departments that we work with. We also know that kratom, that's that yellow picture right there. Kratom is a plant-based material from Southeast Asia. It is, again, not illegal. People who are suffering from heroin withdrawal, they often use it. They say it helps them with their withdrawal symptoms, but we also know that young people are misusing it to feel effects, to feel a high. Okay, so that again is not an illegal substance. Then we also know that there has been a lot of fake prescription medication being laced with fentanyl. This summer in our county, we had over 400,000 pills that were seized that were all laced with fentanyl. Okay, and the big one, especially in high school right here, these are what we call Xanny bars. Okay, they're fake Xanax that are created, and that is what we found in Monmouth County that was seized, which was also, again, cut with fentanyl. If you don't know who this guy is, a lot of your kids did, and why I say this to you is because that's little Pete. He died from ingesting 6 Xanny bars. They did find out through the autopsy that they also had fentanyl in them. So again, you might not know who that is, but a lot of kids were talking about his death, and a lot of kids were hearing terminology that they might not understand what it really is, or understand that a Xanny bar could be laced with something else. Xanny bar is fake Xanax. Fake prescription medication. There's my information. I will tell you honestly, I will try to get back to everyone. The best way to get in touch with me is actually through email. If you call me, I'm not ever really at my desk. I do get my emails through my phone. Sometimes it takes me till midnight to answer you, or 5 o'clock, so if that's gonna bother you, then don't email me, because sometimes that's the only time I can. I will come up here. You may come up here and look at anything, any other questions that anyone has. I wanna thank you for being a fantastic audience. I hope you learned a whole bunch. Any other questions, please go ahead.
So I just want to thank Nikki for coming out again, and on your way out, we have a couple of local prevention and treatment services resources located in the back hallway as you exit, so please stop by, and also you're welcome to come up and take a look at the vapes that she brought with her. Thank you all. Have a nice trip home.